And we sort of
or
encourage them,
micro
and
investments.
we gave them incentives to be good at that, because as a banker, what you're doing is you're carving out margins and percentages, right? So once somebody becomes an expert at carving out percentages, of course they're naturally going to gravitate towards arbitrage, like the excessive reward from the input provided. So they're getting more out
Oh,
of a
yeah.
system than they're putting into a system, but that's what
Yeah.
we're sort of trained and experts at. Like when we want a banker to finance or back a corporation or something like that, we want to make sure the corporation's not making feeling decisions. We want to make
Mm.
sure the corporation's making cutthroat profit margin, motivated, or in, their protocols and procedures should be conducive to making a profit, because that is the purpose and function of the corporation as a whole. And the bankers and investors are there specifically to invest in things that aren't emotional, that are strictly numbers and margins, because that's their job. So
Now,
if
what would
they
you
try and
say?
influence the market rules and the law, we should be expecting that, but we should also be reining it in. We should know for a fact that everything they project to us is going to be their highest aspiration, their best possible self
Mhm.
gain. And we should
Now,
know well enough that it's not criminal or evil, and it's not antithetical to our civilization or high society to like put a cap or rein it down so that it's not excessive, the remuneration they're collecting in return for the services or good to the society that they're offering. We should be
right,
expecting them to be over ambitious.
right, because it's that ambition that pushes them to find that little space where they can make that better deal.
Mm-hmm.
But now some would argue that it would be better if you had more emotional decision making, because actually that would create a better market, or which I that
There's
would.
a good argument for that too. That's the same argument that we started on with the marketplace needing rules. Because the
Mhm,
reason for the market and the purpose for all these layers of abstraction on expertise and specialization, the
mhm.
whole purpose and function to it is so that when we go out and collect wood, we can do it for 3 hours and there's food and a house to come home to, and then everybody's safe. The point to it isn't what we get immediately from collecting wood. The point to it is our subsistence over a long term with less effort. That's the point.
Right. And I think the distaste for that unfeeling corporate decision making process um, comes with, again, the resentment from the, I guess, people of our class that I was like, well, why are they making money when I'm working all day and all they do is sit on the phone all day? Well, firstly, that is work. Secondly, yeah, it is kind of, resentful, but at the same time, it would help if economists pay more attention and gave more lip service to the why, or the meta analysis as to what they're doing. Well, why are you trading this? Well,
Mm-hmm.
trading it so that I can facilitate more effective society that'll push. Because I'm interested in, you can have a path towards it, not just wealth for wealth or wealth qua wealth, where you are, well, I'm just here to make money. I don't care how I get it. But like, yes, you are doing that, and you're part of a system facilitating trade and uh, efficiency of uh, the system itself. But if you pay attention to why, so maybe you're interested in new fusion technologies and you think this is something that society could really use. How do I invest in it? How do I make money off of these people making money? Which isn't it's self-serving, but it's also by that person investing in something like new fusion companies, they're putting themselves in a position for these things to profit from these things being successful. So that person has an interest now in that thing benefiting mankind, because the more it benefits mankind, if one explodes, he loses all his money. If it turns out to be a duff technology, well, he doesn't make any money. But if it brings benefits and happiness to mankind, and all of a sudden everyone wants more of them built, well, that person is going to have a lot of money.
Yeah, and rightly so. And I think that's the whole reason we need regulation in government, is to impose that emotional component into a perfectly rational and mathematical approach, like investing or corporate
Right.
trading or anything like
So the emotion comes up here,
that.
and then the emotion drives what the reasoning for using this unemotional calculation. So the
Right,
calculation itself can't be emotional,
right.
but but the wielding of that calculation can have not emotional, but kind of a enlightened reasoning, I guess. So, but you
This is
can
why
use
keeping economics in mind is so important. Like the principles, when we keep in mind the focus and point of our market systems before we make judgment calls or rationalizations on how to govern a marketplace, I think that's how we make better decisions for market practice. So to expect Zuckerberg to worry about our privacy when his profit model is based on selling our privacy is absurd. It just literally doesn't make sense. You can't
right.
have an incorporated company that's a profit seeking company that sells advertisements based on personal data of its users and expect that this guy should be regulating how privacy is managed. It's his
Well,
job to sell other people's privacy. That's
and what happens if Zuckerberg is a moral relativist and has a different, moral moral baseline than say you do, and says, well, privacy is actually immoral, and someone who values their privacy like me would be like, no, please no. So you get people like me going like, well, I'm not going on Facebook then, because I have a different moral structure. So
cognizant of invisible threats like a risk to your privacy.
mm,
I think we should be regulating that in a sense that we should be making it front row and center to people using Facebook that the things they do have effects. Every time they click a like button or a share button, or every time they expand to read an article or don't, Facebook is tracking that. That's the data they're selling to advertisers. That's the reason that their service is free. And if you can accept that and you're fine to use it, that's fine.
yeah.
The problem is when it's hidden, when it's not made obvious to people and they start receiving advertisements that look like articles written by journalists. That's a problem. That's a
Yeah.
structural social problem to have an advertiser look like a journal article from reputable, what do they call it? Native advertising is what they call it. It's lying.
Yeah.
You're making an article or
Like honestly, I don't really have a problem with Facebook reading my sex and my age and finding out that I don't need to be advertised pregnancy tests and um, dresses and stuff, because, well, that's not really. I'm going to look at that being like, well, that's not for me. That's not for me. That's not for me. But then it's going to be like, did you know that there's a new processor? And I'll be like, oh, that is for me. Uh, so there are like advertising isn't completely evil. I just find it annoying and distasteful.
I think that's where we've lost sense of our skew, right? Like how much emphasis we put on stuff should be relative to the function that they're serving us as a society. And I'm not saying there's no function to Facebook. I'm saying it's not Facebook's function to operate and manage people's security and privacy. Like they're separate entities. That's like asking the woodcutter what the best fruit is to eat to not get sick.
Oh, well, I've seen fruit up in the trees I cut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the kid that's picking up rocks just because they have lots of energy and strength and muscle. You don't ask them how to operate on a pancreas. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not their expertise.
So